William Ghost Carson leaned against the worn leather of his chair, lost in thought. The air in his secluded hideout was heavy with the scent of aged wood and nostalgia. He glanced at the framed photographs that lined his walls, snapshots of another life, a series of poor choices captured in monochrome. His eyes locked onto the safe in the corner of the room, a hulking mass of steel that held his lifetime's earnings. $2 million in unmarked bills, he muttered to himself. The money was the result of meticulous planning, strategic alliances, and a set of principles that he had strictly followed through years of criminal activity. Now, facing an inevitable arrest, Ghost had to decide what to do with it. A wily tactician with a resume that included bank robberies, heists, and other criminal ventures, Ghost was no ordinary criminal. His code of honor separated him from the lowlifes and snitches that plagued his world. He had never double-crossed a member of his crew, never engaged in violence unless absolutely necessary, and most importantly, never left a man behind. With law enforcement closing in on his crew's operations, he had reached a fork in the road. A conviction at his age would likely translate to dying behind bars, and he'd rather avoid his crew suffering the same fate. Ghost had decided to turn himself in, taking the brunt of the charges in exchange for the freedom of his comrades. But what about the money? His eyes narrowed. If he could find someone with an unwavering sense of honor, someone who had never tread the criminal path, he could entrust his life's earnings to them. He didn't want it going to waste or, worse, into the hands of another criminal. The idea took root in his mind, blossoming into a full-fledged plan, a test that would filter out the unworthy, leaving only a true paragon. Ghost sat at a park bench in the early morning, watching life unfold around him. Children playing, couples jogging, but his eyes were locked onto a janitor who had been diligently cleaning the park every day for as long as Ghost could remember. Today was the day he'd execute the first part of his test. Ghost purposely left an envelope on the bench, filled with $10,000 and a note reading, "If you found this, it's yours." Then, he moved to another part of the park where he could observe the janitor's actions. As expected, the janitor soon arrived to clean the area. Upon finding the envelope, he opened it and read the note. Ghost watched as a myriad of expressions crossed the man's face: surprise, skepticism, hope, and finally, decision. The janitor took the envelope to the park's lost and found, ignoring the note's invitation to keep it. Step 1, complete. Over the next few weeks, Ghost ran his candidate through a series of similar tests, each escalating in stakes and complexity. Every time, the janitor, whose name was Henry, passed with flying colors. Satisfied, Ghost finally approached him. They met in the same park, and Ghost told him everything. Well, almost everything. His name remained a mystery. Henry listened, wide-eyed but also skeptical. When the tale was complete, Ghost opened the duffel bag at his feet, revealing stacks of money. "This is for you, Henry. You've proven yourself to be a man of honor, a rare gem in a world filled with deceit and selfishness." Henry was flabbergasted. "Why me?" he finally managed to ask. "Because you've shown that you're the man I could never be," Ghost replied. "Use it well, use it wisely. I've got to go, there's a rendezvous I can't afford to miss." Hours later, Ghost stood in front of the FBI headquarters, hands in his pockets, waiting. Agents swooped in, and in a surprisingly respectful manner, placed him under arrest. As he was led away, his thoughts shifted to Henry and the money that now had the potential to do good in a world he had so often exploited. Henry, with Ghost's money in hand, initially opened a community center. It was a place for education, rehabilitation, and, above all, hope. While planning further expansions, Henry stumbled upon an article online, an arrest record for a young man named Jack Carson for minor drug possession and vandalism. A nagging thought entered Henry's mind. Could this be the son of the man who gave him the money? A quick dive into public records and a few discreet questions later, Henry was certain. Jack was Ghost's son and seemed to be on a path all too similar to his father's. The irony struck him: the father locked away, sacrificing for a better world, while his son treaded a dangerous path. Henry knew what he had to do. Henry reached out to Jack, first as a mentor at the boy's probation hearing, careful not to reveal how deeply he knew the boy's background. Jack was resistant at first, another adult claiming to know what's best for him. But Henry was persistent. There was something about the older man that struck a chord in Jack, a genuine concern that he'd never felt before. As trust was built, Henry broached the subject of life goals, dreams that had been buried under layers of rebellion and anger. Jack, hesitant at first, finally confessed that he had always been fascinated by aviation. Becoming a pilot had been his childhood dream, a vision long since deemed unattainable. Seizing the moment, Henry made an offer. What if you could redirect your life? Leave this past behind you and focus on your passion for flying? In return, you need to commit to productivity, to mending your ways. The offer dangled in the air like a lifeline. For Jack, it was a choice between two legacies, the one his father had just left him, or the one his father had lived most of his life. Finally, Jack agreed. With Henry's guidance and the money that originated from Ghost, Jack enrolled in an aviation academy. The early days were tough, filled with academic rigor and demanding training schedules, but every time he felt like giving up, Henry was there to remind him of his promise. In prison, Ghost received a letter from Henry, delivered through a complex network, to protect his identity. The letter told him about the probation hearing that Henry had discovered, and how his own son was now chasing a dream instead of a life of crime. As he read the lines, Ghost felt tears come to his eyes. Finally, his life had come full circle. The money he had left behind, his legacy, had found its way back to his own blood, steering him away from the path he had treaded so long ago. Years later, Jack Carson stood in front of a group of at-risk youth at his local community center. Dressed in his pilot's uniform, he recounted the story of two men, one, an older criminal who chose honor over greed, and the other, a simple janitor whose life was changed overnight. In the crowd was Henry, older but still vibrant, and in a distant prison cell, Ghost smiled, knowing that the code of honor he had lived by had finally paid its dividends. For these men had redefined legacy, not as a product of their past, but as a testament to their choices. And in their individual yet intertwined ways, they had all managed to leave the world just a little better than they found it.